Welcome back to the City Current Radio Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're honored to be joined by our next guest, Chris Whitney. He's the founder and director of One Generation Away. How are you doing, Chris?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Hanging in there, doing well. So obviously we're doing all this remote. I'm in my home studio. You're in your office, trying to make sure everyone is safe and healthy. But starters, give us a little background on One Generation Away in terms of, what you're doing is really cool in terms of fighting food insecurity and food deserts. And so give us a little backstory, though, for the kind of the history of the organization.
Yeah, so it's crazy. It started one day I pastored a church. When I moved here, we started a church, and I was just praying one day, and God dropped that phrase in my heart, One Generation Away, and that's kind of how it all started. And so we did, my wife worked at a place called Mid-Cumberland Community Action Agency, and a guy would deliver bread there, and he said, hey, we could drop this big truckload of food in a parking lot. And she said, I'll tell my husband. And that's how it all started, man. We did they used to do a Cinco de Mayo festival here in Franklin, and it wasn't the party one. It was more like blow-ups for families, and they could do a picnic, and they gave away clothing and food to low-income families. So that's when we did our first truck, and I was like, man, this is pretty cool. I don't need storage. I can just give it away, go home, and hey, that's great,
Yeah.
And so we did it again and again, and so that's how it started. And then one day a guy called me, Tom Henry from Feed America First, and said, hey, Whole Foods called us here in Franklin, and they're located in Murfreesboro. And he said, but we don't rescue food, but they wanted somebody to rescue food. And I'm like, and he goes, you want to do that? And I said, sure, why not? I had a Hyundai Santa Fe is what we had, man. So
I was about to say, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into, but you just say, we'll figure this out.
Yeah, man. I tell people the only thing I knew about food was I like to eat it. I had no earthly idea what I was getting into. And, but when I had this vision of it, I dreamed of like feeding 1 million people in one day around the country through like the local church and civic groups. And so when I first told people that, they're like, dude, that's crazy, man. And I'm like, but I could see it. And so we started back right during the flood, basically. And then in June of 2013, we became our own 501c3. And the growth has been, especially the last, I'd say in the end of 2013, right a month after we signed a lease, I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer.
Oh, wow.
So it was the first lease on a building we have ever signed, and for this, and it was $2,000 a month. And we understood the commitment that if we didn't raise that money, we had to pay it, you know what I mean, kind of thing.
Sure.
And we signed the lease in November. December 31st, I was diagnosed with stage, because we had at that time what we thought was, which was at our time, the biggest year we ever had. I think we did like 400,000 pounds of food. We tripled that last month almost, now. But back then it was a big deal, man. You start from your car, and now you got a truck, and you're going to get a warehouse because you're booming, and so 14 was a really down year, but especially from 17 to 19, we grew 300%.
Wow.
And then this year it's just crazy.
Yeah, I was about to say, now more than ever, the need for what you do is so critical. Talk about how you do it, because as you alluded to, you've got these partners on one side, everything from the Costco and Whole Foods and Publix and Outback, to then engaging volunteers. I mean, there's a lot of process for what you do. So walk us through how this works.
Yeah. So a day here is really kind of crazy. We'll have normally now pretty much 2 26-foot refrigerated trucks on the road. So there's the process of going and rescuing the food from stores, which we do every day of the week. And then we have partner agencies that we work with. Now, some of those would be very familiar to a lot of people that would listen to this pod, Nashville Food Project being one of them. The Little Pantry That Could, Stacy's Place up in North Nashville. A lot of that some of these listeners may recognize and know. Sure. These people that are dear friends of ours. The Branch in Antioch. They do ESL, and then they also do a feeding program. So those are some of our partners that a lot of people know about. There's some that people wouldn't even think about. Bridges Domestic Violence Shelter. The school systems, which most people would think that would be. We work with a lot of social workers in Williamson County schools and Franklin Special School District. And we also have a couple of social workers in metropolitan Nashville, in the Metro Nashville School District as well. One that I found was interesting is the juvenile justice system here in Williamson County. You think about a family goes to court and they're given kids that they weren't expecting to go home with. And we have one great story of one of the first ones early on. And so the Zanny Martin, who runs the Williamson County Juvenile Justice System, heard me speaking to some school principals, and she said, I want to talk to you. And so anyway, we provide these 40-pound boxes of food for them to give home. And one was a single mother teacher with 2 of her own children, and picked up 3 kids at a court hearing from a family member. And they handed her a box of food, and she cried, and she said, I had no idea how I was going to feed these kids.
Wow.
Yeah. So so we have all these agencies, and we have agencies all over Middle Tennessee that come to us. I mean, there's people that come from Manchester on a regular basis. I just got a call from somebody down in Knoxville that wants to come up here and get food from us. And
and I think when you have an opportunity to bless so many, and I think, even back to your point before about the growth, and you see the big numbers, but with every number, there's a person that you're individually helping in a family. And so you get to see obviously the compounding effect, but with every single one, there's a personal story of someone that was really struggling, was questioning where they were going to go to feed their family. And you get to be that blessing for that family or that person.
No, that's exactly right, Jermaine. And the cool thing about Saturdays, mostly our mobile pantries that I was telling you about where we started are on Saturdays, a couple Fridays, but we'll do about 45 of them a year. And actually now we're in we'll be in about 4 or 5 states a year because we do disaster relief trips. But the majority, 40 of those will be like in Middle Tennessee. And we just had a story the other day down on Wedgwood. So, the fairgrounds on Wedgwood. So you can imagine people that are listening to this in the Nashville area, the line was backed up from the fairgrounds underneath the 65 viaduct going that way. But then you had the street coming down that dead ends into Wedgwood, you know what I mean? Coming up the hill. I just lost the name of the street, but anyway, so we've got traffic merging in that way. We fed 450 families and turned 150 families away.
Wow. And
that was 30,000 pounds of food. But one of the stories that was great is a guy that came with his son, first time, one of the first times ever. And it was just one of those magical moments when you go, this guy said this woman's got her car windows down, and he just said to her, ma'am, are you okay? And she said, she's just weeping. And he said, she said, no, she says, all I had in my refrigerator was a little bit of chicken. And she's just crying, weeping, saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. And he said, it was worth everything for me, for my 9-year-old son to see that.
Yeah.
Because it's just something he's never, ever experienced or ever had to see. And, we have so many stories about things like that. Like you said, that this was my last meal I was going to eat. I didn't have any food. We didn't know how we were going to feed our children. We hear story after story after story like that. And, we've had a tornado and COVID-19 here. So that problem has been exacerbated immensely by this whole situation.
Yeah. And I think that's where going back to the need is so great now, because on both fronts, one is you have the tornado and that devastation, and really 2 of them kind of going through. And then you have on your end, COVID-19 and the economic repercussions of that, where people losing their jobs and being displaced in terms of what they're able to do with that loss of income. There's so many variables. And so talk about how we can help, because you do have many different ways that we can help. And so talk about some of those different ways that we can plug in and serve with you, but also obviously assist what you're doing.
Yeah, so that's great. If they go to our website, onegenaway.com, and they just click on the Join the Movement button, they'll get on our email blast. And we don't do much on our email blast. Mostly what we do is we always post the next distribution date, where it's going to be. And right now with COVID, we've had to change our model, because we leave all the people that receive in their cars. So we actually draw maps out of how the parking lot's going to look for the people that arrive to volunteer where to park, and where the line's going to start for the cars. So that's one way, is come on a Saturday morning. Normally it's 7:45 in the morning. We're normally done by 11. So 3.5 hours of your time, but you will forever be impacted, because you once again are meeting, you're seeing the end user, you're seeing the person that you're meeting the need.
Yeah.
So that's one great way that we always need volunteers. And we normally need 125, 150 volunteers at every one of those distributions. We do have, sometimes we're loosening up a little bit more with COVID, but we do have some warehouse volunteer opportunities. Right now, they're normally Tuesdays and Thursdays, because we are giving away over 450 40-pound boxes of food weekly right now. and which is where another need comes in. So the strange thing about what's going on, and we've read about this, are store shelves. So we've fluctuated, like had a hard time getting mac and cheese for a while. And now we can get mac and cheese. I've got like 7 pallets of corn. I bought like 6 weeks ago. It took 6 weeks to get 7 pallets of corn. But now I have corn, but now I'm short of green beans. And
so a little bit like no rime or reason. You're playing a game too, just trying to figure out like, okay, what can I actually get? Now,
yeah, you're like Tetrising food. Yeah.
Is that a byproduct of like on the retail side, or just the distribution channels and the logistics? All the above?
All the above, really. And peanut butter is the other one that we're having a hard time getting now. So what happens is if you think about retailers now, they don't store a lot of things. You know, it's like they may store 20% of what they make. Their storage is the stores. You know, I mean, it makes sense if you think about it from a business model. But if there's a run on the shelves and you're down to nothing and you only have a 20% surplus,
right, it goes pretty
in
fast.
Storage, that's gone because 80% of what you've got's already gone. You know, you don't have any way of replicating that. So that's where the problem lies. So sometimes we have a little more challenge buying in bulk than we used to. It used to be I could walk into Aldi and just buy a few pallets of things, but they're trying to stock their own shelves. So more than ever, we've leaned on our volunteers or our community to say, hey, if you can pick up some extra peanut butter or some canned chicken or green beans, that would be awesome. And we've got bins outside of our warehouse. You could just set them in the bins and we'll take care of it from there, you know, because we're going through 2,000 cans of corn a week and 2,000 cans of green beans a week, you know.
But that's where on your end, things that are kind of the non-perishable or the canned items, things that obviously are easy to move, but also have a long shelf life.
Shelf life,
help the family, yeah.
And we're moving a lot of produce too. I mean, we're moving, I think we just realized just the stores we rescued in last month, we moved 360,000 pounds of produce.
Wow.
In 4 weeks, you know, so that's, and I mean, this stuff's potatoes, bananas, things like that, stuff that's really, really, really good. Now that we're trying to be more sensitive on timing. We don't want it to sit for days, you know, but if we can get it to a family and it'll last them for days, but I don't want to sit in my warehouse for days.
Sure.
And then go bad. And then all of a sudden I got to rush it out to a family. So that's where we spread those a lot to our agencies, you know, instead of an emergency box of food, that's harder to do. But for our agencies, that's why we give to so many agencies, because that spreads the reach and it gets it into the hands of the people that need it much faster.
Yeah. Talk about just kind of the immediate, like we're talking about with the tornado and COVID-19 and the immediate need of being able to step in and play that role, but also too, the long-term game that you're playing in terms of fighting the food insecurity, fighting food deserts, trying to help on that side. So the balance of immediate versus long-term goals, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, our first disaster relief trip was Hurricane Harvey with Team Music is Love, Martina McBride's foundation, and a great foundation. And when she first called me, I said, I don't want to go for 3 months. And they looked at me like I was half crazy. I said, no, you don't understand. In 3 months, everybody leaves and the need's going to be for 5 years. And so we tend to not look to be the very front, because in the front end, there's tons of water comes, people are barbecuing, cooking meals for everybody. But that 3 month mark, so that's our normal modus operandi. And then we go for another year or 2 years down the road. Like we're still going to Panama City, Florida, you know, and I mean, it's so bad down there, people wouldn't even imagine 2 years later. But so the interesting thing, when the tornado hit at 4:30, my phone goes off, my text message goes off, you know, and I'm like, man, and I roll it because I'm a police chaplain too. So I roll over thinking, you know, and the text is, what are you going to do about the tornado? And I live in Franklin. So I'm like, I'm like, tornado. I go, turn on the news, you know? So we turn on the news and here's a tornado hits my home, not Franklin, but Nashville, you know?
Right, yeah.
I don't have the luxury of saying, we're not going to show up for 3 months.
Yep.
It's my backyard.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that was, that caused us that morning to jumpstart to say, okay, we're going to go right now. We got to get into Nashville. So we started calling some of our first responder friends. Where are you going to be working? What can we do to work with you to, you know, get into the hands of families? Then COVID hit and we literally turned in 48 hours and, you know, a 900% increase in production of boxes in 48 hours, because schools were calling and like, we've got to get food into our families' hands. And as you said, Jeremy, it's like we knew right then, back when the IRS had the big layoff, you know what I mean? When they were, so there's an IRS office here in Cool Springs with 250 employees. Well, they're a month in with not getting paid, and they're going to work every day. And a lot of them are commuting from Clarksville. So here your gas bill's still going, you know what I mean? So we served over 100 of those families in 2 days out of our warehouse. And they were like, all of them said the same thing. I've never had to do this before in my life. And so that, I feel like, was a prep for us for what's coming with COVID. You know what I mean? Because we are dealing with a lot of people like, I've never had to go
never had to
food.
deal with this. Yeah.
And one thing we'd like people to know is, hey man, this is a season. I tell people this all the time. This is not forever. You don't need to feel guilt, or there's no guilt, no shame, man. We're all in this together. We're all a few paychecks away from being in the same boat for a lot of us, And I said, the neat thing is you're going to, in a few months, you'll be back on your feet. You'll have an opportunity to come back and give back. And invariably, I've had these, I tell people a story. A couple months ago, a lady's pushing a shopping cart and she's smiling and she looks at me. She goes, you don't know me, but I just wanted you to know, a couple months ago, I was receiving food. Now I don't need it anymore, but I get to give it away.
That's awesome.
And so those are the cool stories. And I think that's what we're going to see out of COVID. We're going to see a lot of people that received that are going to come back and go, man, I never understood what it meant to be hungry, but now I do. And I want to make sure it's the best experience I can make it for someone that has to receive food.
Yeah. It creates empathy and dignity and everything for everyone, because then you understand it.
Yes. And our goal is to ask no questions, just feed people, it's already humbling enough to need to have to do that. And early on in our marriage, we had a child born with spina bifida. So we went for a 6-month stretch where my wife had to go to food banks for 6 months to help us make ends meet because of our medical bills were so high and things like that. So years and years ago, we lived this thing. So we understand the emotion of being on the receiving end as well as the emotion of being on the giving end. There's an emotion on the giving side.
Absolutely.
The people that give are the ones that are the most wrecked when they leave. They're humbled, they're amazed, they're thankful. And, you realize that we're all not that very different. And I think that's the neat thing about it for me is I want people to experience each other from different cultures, different socioeconomic backgrounds to go, man, they're really not any different. They want the same things I want, the same desires, the same needs,
Yep.
And they're just, for whatever reason, I've had the opportunity to not have to have that, have that need in my life, but boy, it sure is neat to be the answer to that need.
Absolutely. So go ahead and wrap up and talk about website, social media, phone number. Where would you direct everyone to reach out and get involved?
Yeah, onegenaway.com. So you spell it out, ONEGENAWAY.com. That's the best place to donate, to sign in, to volunteer. Facebook page is One Gen Away. Instagram is one.gen.away. And Twitter is One Gen Away as well. So all of those, any of those, we post on all those platforms are the three major platforms. I do some on my personal LinkedIn page as well, but you'll see it mostly on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where you see most of our posts. But and the website has all of our mobile pantries throughout the year, whatever state we're in or wherever we are, you'll be able to follow those on that.
Well, Chris, greatly appreciate all you and your team do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jeremy. Really appreciate it, man. Have a great day.